What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday. Once again, we're getting tactical. First off, big shout out to everybody who's coming in on the VOD, and thanks that these are edited videos. I got a bunch of comments on one of the recent ones about people being like, why isn't this edited? Turns out, because it's a live stream. But anyway, we're here with the show that we do live over here on the channel every Tuesday. You can come hang out in the chat room if you want to. It's pretty fun. It's a good time. We've got Inky's here too. She's got lots of comments to talk about the state of competitive 40k right now. And we have, I don't know, it's been an interesting week. It was a holiday weekend for people who are into that sort of thing. So we had a couple big events, but it wasn't hugely well attended. And unlike last week, where we had tons of super majors happen and we had millions of things to talk about, this time around it was a little bit lower key. We did have one major level event. West Coast GT went down, which is a very large, a big ol' event. Audio interference. What? I don't know. I don't know anything about audio interference. I can turn my audio down, maybe? Static? What the fuck? Alright, I'll just check my connection, I guess. Is that better? I unplugged everything and plugged it back in. Oh yeah, it looks like it goes down. Huh. I wonder if I had a loose... Is it better now, chat? Okay. I think I literally just had a loose cable. I just unplugged it and plugged it back in. That was weird. All right. Yeah, bizarre. I don't know, chat. I have no idea what that was about, but there you go. Thank you for letting me know. I can't hear that stuff, so I have no idea. Anyway, we don't have too much to talk about because, yeah, there were a couple large events. There was one big event, as well as a couple GT, sort of GT plus level events, like 50 plus players. But other than that, not too much going on. And to be honest, going through the list earlier today, in preparation for the show, there wasn't like nothing was particularly groundbreaking. We do have a couple interesting lists to talk about, but we can just go through you know, our X and ones and talk about some good stuff that's going on. Send the help desk bill over. Well, good luck with that. I appreciate it. So yeah, a couple interesting lists. If you watched my video earlier, I kind of aggregated both of the weeks together. We had really good weeks from Grey Knights, was kind of the standout for this week. They were really killing it. For the people wondering about Imperial Knights, they did not have a good week. In fact, I didn't really see any Imperial Knights at like X and 1 even, which is a little bit sad. And I'm sad for them. We do have a little bit of Chaos Knights to talk about. Even some big Chaos Knights, or at least one big Chaos Knight is in one of these. But I figured that we'll jump into some weird and interesting lists, and if people have factions that we want to talk about in specific, they can drop it in, and then we'll sort of root around a little bit, try to find some good stuff. All right, so I think one of every week it feels like there's always one event that's always interesting, and today was Battle Ready Wargaming. They had a pretty wild event over here, the March Mayhem GT. Ended with a tie. Colin Watts and Gavin Kahn both drew in the semifinals, went on to win their finals games, and both go undefeated. So first of all, big congrats to them. Again, another Grey Knights win. Grey Knights taking down yet another event. It seems like that Nemesis Dread Knight change was absolutely transformative to the faction, and Grey Knights are I would say legitimately. Oh, we got a big knight anyway. There you go, chat. We get one little peek in from Imperial Knights. I would say Grey Knights have kind of graduated to legitimately being a meta threat. Given their performance in the last 2 weeks, I think that they are one of the best performing factions. I guess it's like jury's still out if we want to say that they are one of the strongest factions, but I think that is certainly contention for them. But they're certainly one of the best performing factions, at least in this little kind of microcosm of a data set that we have to look at. But look at all these vehicles. Look at that. 3 Brotherhood Librarians to do actions, 3 Nemesis Grandmaster Dread Knights, 3 Dread Knights, Canis Rex. That's the list. This list is kind of sweet, actually. Big Pacific Rim vibes, you know? We're just taking a bunch of big stompy robots. Just stomping around, doing Nemesis Dread Knight stuff. Eldar's finally died. A little bit. They certainly are not as highly played as much as they were. They crop up occasionally. They're not sort of competitively dead. You can play them. I just think that the people who are playing them in order to play them because they were good have moved on to other factions. You can still win with them for sure, but I think the people who are playing them are kind of Eldar faction purists and big Eldar fans. And they're still doing well. I mean, Avatar lists. We saw Jonathan Betteridge with his Scathach Wraith Knight list. We have a lot of kind of interesting builds coming out of Eldar, but they're not as like point-and-click adventure gamey as they were beforehand. So they are just, people aren't just picking them up all the time. We did have one Imperial Knights list at Void War. Okay, well, we can check them out. But yeah, anyways, speaking about Battle Ready, we did have Genestealer Cults at X and 1. We saw a little bit of success from Genestealer Cults this week. No wins for them, no undefeated results, but we did have them do well at Battle Ready Wargaming. Robin Roberts over here, the great patriarch himself, as well as Alex McDougall over at Wet Coast Game GT also did fairly well. It's mostly kind of standard Ascension Day stuff. Biophagus with a big brick of Aberrants. There's one Clamovis, double Killer Morph, triple Primus, and a Reductus Saboteur. Jumping into 2 of 10 Acolyte hybrids, 2 of 20 Neophyte hybrids to take adopt those characters, I guess. Plus the big Aberrant brick for the Biophagus to jump into, and a couple of other forward operators, Pierce Train Genestealers, as well as a Cyclops Demolition Vehicle to do actions. So I would say normally standard stuff. It seems like we're really kind of cementing the fact that the Aberrants seem like the way to go. You have to have more on-table presence than just having the Neophytes give you, because I think a lot of people they're ready for hordes of stuff to jump out of Deep Strike. That's kind of like the meta right now, especially with Grey Knights, especially with Hypercrypt Legion. Everyone's like, oh, if you're gonna hop in on me, it's not gonna go well for you. I'm gonna have infiltrators. I'm gonna have lots of cheap screens, and just make it difficult for the cultists to jump in and flip objectives and really muck with you. I also wonder how much. I don't think this is maybe like statistically relevant, but I wonder how much people are more prepared for 3-inch deep strikes as well, because we have Cosmic Precision out of Hypercrypt, and there's more success from Chaos Demons. I noticed a lot of people being caught out by 3-inch deep strikes at the beginning of the edition, and that was kind of Ascension Day's like whole big thing, right? Like, oh, we get to put everything in reserve. We have 1 million deep strikers, and we cannot be downy, and we have a 3-inch deep strike with a bunch of OC2 infantry, and those dudes can just jump in, steal 1 or 2 objectives, and just muck with your opponent really hard. It was obviously a little bit different when you could string back to their ambush markers, so you could do it throughout the entire game instead of just when you came in the first time. But it feels like a lot of people are ready. They have the formations, ready to prepare to not get absolutely lambasted by 3-inch deep strikes. And that's good to see, because I think it reduces the number of like free wins you can get from those. So yeah, we also had some Chaos Knights. Colin Cochran over here speaking of big knights, did bring the big knight rampager. So not all war dogs. Although to be fair, it is mostly war dogs in this list. But we have the one stalker to be the warlord, alongside, what is that, 4 brigands and 6 carnivores, plus a unit of nurglings, 2 nurglings, I guess, to act as utility. Pretty standard stuff, but it's nice to see the Ravager back, or the Rampager, excuse me, back on the table. It's an interesting, War Dog skew is obviously very interesting. It's very good at keeping up on primary, obviously, because it's so high OC. And especially with all the carnivores, they're so aggressive and they're so cheap that you can just throw them away on people's objectives and they have a really good chance of getting there with Knights of Shade. But if your opponent, it feels pretty Boolean, because if your opponent is ready for your T10 12 wound profile without really any tricks, maybe you can rotate ion shields, maybe you can get the feel no pain against battle shocked enemies or whatever. If your opponent's ready to deal with that stat line, you just lose so many war dogs so quickly. The Rampager, it feels like, gives you a little bit of an out for those situations where suddenly you don't have to be strength 11, you have to be strength 13, and you have to be able to do 22 damage in one go rather than 12. Otherwise, he's going to come back and slap you really hard. And most armies can do that, to be fair. But with Knights of Shade, at least the Rampager can now remain safe in a relatively aggressive position before he commits, so he doesn't necessarily just get knocked off the table immediately if he doesn't go first. I guess he does kind of put strain on your Knights of Shade, which is probably a big downside. You'd most of the time, I guess, rather be pushing 2 stalkers or 2, brigands or carnivores rather than the one big dude, but I think he helps quite a bit. Chaos Knight, Big Knight rises. He comes from behind and comes in and gets you. Jason Watts over here also has a super interesting list. Oh no, this is just a regular invasion fleet. Just kidding. It's not as interesting, but it does have horror specs in it, which is kind of cool. Some Tyranids with the Biovore, Exocrine, double horror specs, and 1 Norn Emissary. Pretty sweet to see. Plus a bunch of scoring stuff. 1 Trigon, double Screamer Killer. We don't have any Neurolictors though, right? That was a little bit weird. Feels like a missed opportunity. The Screamer Killer plus Neurolictor combo is a really big deal. But Screamer Killers battle shocking you in the Tyranid shooting phase is relevant, because you can't use defensive stratagems since they hit you, so it's certainly something. Although I don't know if I would personally take them without Neurolictors. But we do have a big unit of Zoanthropes to take advantage of all of the range buffs. So we can give them reroll 1s, we can give them ignore cover, and then we can give them assault with the Hive Tyrant as well. So they have the whole wombo combo of bonuses available to them. Can run up and do their thing. But I have another Tyranid list that I do want to talk about. It is from a different event. Factorum GT did have some interesting Tyranids. It was Tau Empire at number 1. I don't think we're going to talk about Tau Empire really this week, because they're staring down the barrel of the new codex. So anything we talk about right now isn't quite as exciting. But Mark Pepper over here has a pretty weird one. It is a little bit awkwardly formatted, so we'll have to do a little bit of work to actually uncover what's going on at this in this list. But yeah, well, we'll see what we can do. It is a Vanguard Onslaught, which is cool to see, because we don't see them too often. I think definitely Invasion Fleet's a little bit more well-rounded, but Vanguard Onslaught is better in very specific situations. A lot of times we see Vanguard Onslaught kind of as the go-to for team events, because it's extremely one-dimensional and super-duper scoring heavy. But it's a little bit less popular for singles events. So we're running Death Leaper, a Chameleonic Broodlord, so he has stealth. I think that's just to fill points. Neurotyrants with Hunting Grounds. So that's the one that forces you to take a battle shock when you arrive from strategic reserve. So you can muck with people jumping out of reserve, especially if you'll then turn on all your you prevent them from scoring, and oftentimes prevent them from scoring secondaries when they hop in. But then also all of your battle shock synergies work on them. It is double Broodlord. Oh my god, this is so hard. Okay, so this is the section header. It's double Broodlord Neuro Tyrant. So we have 2 units of 10 Gene Stealers with the Broodlords in them. So 22 Gene Stealers, very exciting. Plus double Lictors, a Neurogaunt. 1 Neurogaunt unit, I guess. Yeah. It says it twice, but that's only 1 unit. 1 Neurolictor, 6 Raveners for the uppy downies. Love a good Ravener unit. And especially if you're kind of leaning into Battle Shock, which I think we a little bit are. We have that Hunting Grounds, we have the Neurolictor on the board, and we have a Screamer Killer as well. As soon as the Raveners get their +1 to wound, because they have Twin Linked baked in, but their strength value is kind of low, they actually go kind of ham. Raveners with +1 to wound are no joke. And for only 25 points a model for 7 attacks, it's pretty good. They are definitely... If we needed to clear more hordes in Tyranids, I mean, I don't know if Tyranids need help killing hordes. They're super good at it, but Raveners would definitely be one of the tools in the toolbox for sure. We have 6 Von Ryan Sleepers. I know a lot of people have been taking either a big one of 6 because your Neuronode redeployments are more effective. Although I don't think we even have Neuronode in this list at all. We don't have the redeploy because most of what we're doing is scouting these guys, the Gene Stealers. But if you have the Neuronode redeployment, the big unit of 6 is more efficient for redeploys, but a lot of people take like 2 units of 3 just to move and block their opponent on the first turn. Like simply to put them in front of their opponent's models on turn 1 and prevent them from scouting and then prevent them from moving too far. And plus you get a little baby Alpha Strike if you get to go first, which is super exciting. But the big 6 is like definitely a mood. This list is super Alpha Strike oriented, right? All it wants to do is like front load with Von Ryan Sleepers, put Gene Stealers in the middle of the table, hit you with 1 or 2 of those things, follow up with the second wave of the same stuff with the Raveners probably deep striking behind them, and then behind that it also has all these monsters. So it has an Exocrine, a Psychophage, which is interesting, but it does have these big units of multi-wound models, so having a 6-up Feel No Pain on them doesn't hurt for sure. Otherwise, Psychophage is really bad, so I don't know how often we see that guy, but we have a Norn Emissary as well to just hold down the midboard, which is something that I think a lot of Vanguard Onslaught lists kind of eschew, which is they focus on these fast Gene Stealers and Tyranid Warriors and Raveners and stuff like that, and they don't really have the beef to withstand any enemy attacks that aren't necessarily just the infantry sweepers. And then having Norns or having Maliceptors definitely helps, I think, in those situations. But pretty wild list, super weird. Too many weaknesses in individuals. Yeah, I mean, I think Neurolictors are so good. I think that the 80-point price tag on them is certainly rough. And it's hard to justify the third, but I think the more Neurolictors that you have, the happier you are typically as a Tyranid player. If you're trying to kill your opponent's models, to be clear. Neurolictors are kind of necessary for that, but they aren't necessarily one of them is okay if all you're trying to do is offensively debuff your opponent's stuff with Battle Shock. But you do need them, alongside the Screamer Killer, you do need them for the damage buff if you are trying to actually do a murder. And we do have the Neuro Tyrant, so that's probably what we're going to be trying to do, is get the defensive Battle Shock aura active, where you have this Neurolictor basically standing next to the Norn Emissary in the center of the table. So you have a good Feel No Pain. You're -1 to be hit from most attacks if they're within 12 inches of the Neurolictor and Battle Shocked. So if they've come in out of reserve and gotten hit by the Hunting Grounds, or they got Shadow in the Warp the previous turn, then either one of those situations, if they commit, they're going to be -1 to be hit, or to hit you. Thoughts on running a Calidus Assassin and Watchmaster in a Deathwatch list to shut down 2 different battle tactics? I like it, actually. I think the other thing that you can do that very few people, I think, do, and sometimes it is not really relevant, but it definitely means that you're never out of things to do. You can always just double hit command reroll, right? Where you go from having a command reroll occasionally, if you really need it, to it basically being off the table entirely, which can definitely hurt your opponent's game plan. But also there's situations where you hit you know, basically like any Space Marine list, and they have like 2 or 3 battle tactics that you want to hit, and you're like, oh, which one do I do? Well, you just have 2, so there you go. And Space Marines are such a big part of the meta right now that I think it's almost always worth having like more Vects, more better against those matchups for sure. T-Dog, going to your first GT next weekend. I'm going to put Space Marines back into Tactical Tuesday. Well, the reason we don't talk about Space Marines in Tactical Tuesday, Chad, is not that Space Marines are bad. It's that they're too good, and that we talk about them incessantly on the Monday video. So it's like, it's not like, unless we have, you know, really weird and wild Space Marine lists to talk about, we always talk about every variety of Space Marines on the best armies in 40k, because they're always winning. They're just constantly in the top, in like the top 3 of every event forever. Which is I don't know. It's good, I think, for Space Marines right now. I think Space Marines are in an amazing spot. Maybe vanilla Space Marines slightly less, because you're like, a lot of people are just in on like Ultramarines, Vanguard, or bust. But I don't think that that's necessarily, you know, the correct interpretation of the situation. Hunting Grounds anti-Necron tech. I believe it hits specifically strategic reserves, right? It's a little bit weird if I remember correctly. I'm going to double check myself on that real quick. Oh no, it is any reserve. Yeah. So it's just, I think it's just generically good against anybody who's uppy downy. Anybody with repositional effects, like you can force so many hits on them. Bet I can't find a Death Watch list. I think that's just because nobody's playing them. Nobody like wants to put the time into working them out, but maybe Death Watch should be on the. I'm working on a Space Wolf video, I think, or a Space Wolf list right now, because so many people are like complaining about the spot of Space Wolves being basically like the Stormlands Task Force delivery system, but Space Wolves has so many cool things going on, and I think that's true of most Space Marine chapters, outside of the vanilla ones where like the only unique thing they have is one character. Most of the more unique chapters have multiple ways to play, and that could be an interesting direction to go in. Do some real hardcore classic Deathwatch lists with a bunch of kill teams. Not in nearly as good a spot as Black Templars. Yeah, I mean, that's true, but whatever. Just play Blue Templars. Or do whatever you want. I think you can play most of the... You're missing out on like the raw power of playing the non-compliant chapters if you are... if you've, you know, moved off from them, but I do think that there is... I do think that there are multiple builds available for most of them, and that have interesting directions you can go in, and I think any of them can top a GT. I think up to and maybe including Imperial Fists. Imperial Fists is like is where things get questionable, right? When you have like 2 characters that are both like kind of mediocre, you're like, all right, well maybe we need something else. But like, you know, basically all the chapters through Salamanders I think are GT winning potential. For sure. All right. I wanted to jump back into the... Not this event. Oop, I clicked on away. No, it is the Battle Ready. Oh my god, did I close it? Jesus Christ. I'm so bad at this game, chat. I wanted to go back to Battle Ready Wargaming real quick, because I wanted to talk about the Necron list. We talked about the Grey Knight list that topped it. I had some notes about the other Necron list, because interestingly, check out this, chat. Look at that. It's not a Canoptic Court. It's not a Hypercrypt Legion. We are back to Awakened Dynasty for this one, which is super cool. Not a detachment that we've seen play in a really long time. Although we did see, interestingly, at 8TC, we saw it was one of the most widely played Necron archetypes was Awakened Dynasty over playing the more like sort of quote unquote the more powerful detachments, more competitive detachments. But this is, you know, Awakened Dynasty basically being the Codex or the Index detachment, with a little bit of changes. They renamed all the enhancements, which I'm gonna have to remind myself of what they changed them to. He's a Locust Sword with the Veil of Darkness, so he has the built-in redeploy. And then all the other ones I think got new names. So the Netherrealm Casket is the, I think it was Hyper Material Ablator previously. It gave you cover and stealth. Now it just gives you stealth while you're leading a unit. But that's on a Technomancer, so it's probably on a Wraith unit. So we have Canoptic Wraiths that are like 4+, 5+ Feel No Pain, and now also stealth, which is kind of insane. Just trying to get to grips with those guys sounds absolutely miserable. We have a second one of those, and we have the Silent King, the great man himself, the big bad Silent King on a list, which is super cool. Tyranids are better than Imperial Fists? I don't believe that for a second, chat. That is a hot take. Like, I think that on the, the baseline of any Space Marine chapter is the baseline of the Space Marine Codex, which is just better than the Tyranid Codex. So, like, you could play, you could tell yourself you're playing Imperial Fist, and if you take Lysander as the same, like in his capacity that he used to be taken in, where he was a singleton drop down because he had an insane invuln save once per game, that you would just drop down and do actions with. If that's the only Imperial Fist flavor that you have in your army, and you play a regular ass Space Marine list, you're gonna beat Tyranids 9 times out of 10. You're gonna be fine. It's like, I think it's an issue of conflating win percentages with power level, and which I think is just not the right way to look at it, because you're not considering the faction at its logical extent. You're considering it as the encapsulation of its community, right? And I think a lot of people playing Imperial Fists are playing, a bunch of heavy intercessors or whatever, because they're cool and they have bolters, and that's the Imperial Fist thing. And you're like, sure, yeah, that's cool, but that's not actually what the faction's capable of. And I think you could just play an Ironstorm Spearhead that has, Torgarodon in it, and you'd probably be in a pretty good spot. Not as good as a Black Templar's Ironstorm Spearhead. Don't get me wrong, that's strictly better, but probably better than a Tyranid list. So yeah, this is super sick. It's a Canoptic Reanimator to bulk up these Canoptic Wraiths. So we're basically constructing this build that's just it eschews the flexibility of Canoptic Court Wraiths for being like wildly survivable, right? Stealth plus they get the additional reanimation from the Reanimator as well, so they're healing more wounds. Scarab Swarm for some actions. 2 units of 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers plus a singleton Locust Heavy Destroyer. That's for the Locust Lord to join into with Exterminators. So we have just the 2 units of 2 with Destructors, so they can sit in the back and shoot anti-tank rounds. But then the 3-man gets the bonus for being led, right? Because it's Awakened Dynasty, so they get +1 to hit. And then they also get the redeploy from Veil of Darkness. And then those with the Exterminators have those. They're going to get those big sustained and critical 5s rapid fire weapons. So they're just shooting insane amounts of infantry clearing for relatively inexpensive. I guess they're not super cheap with the character in them, but they're hitting on 2s with those sustains is going to clear most infantry units that they shoot at, plus 2 units of Tomb Blades for some utility as well. And then the Silent King's just there. I think probably just sitting inside. I guess he's buffing the heavy destroyers early on because he can give them rerolls, right? And then he can also benefit, once he kind of commits in, he can also benefit the Canoptic Wraiths with rerolls as well, because they don't typically have that outside of Canoptic Court. And that's the real downside, is that they can tank for days, but their damage output is actually abysmal. They have the Particle Casters they can shoot in melee, which is nice. And they have solid melee attacks, but their weapon skill, ballistic skill is atrocious. So they tend to be extremely spiky. Sometimes, hi Inky, you want to come say hi to chat? Come on up. No? Okay. Fine, be that way. Here's a Silent King, by the way. So they can be relatively spiky, but getting the rerolls to hit and wound, not to mention the fact that it affects all your attacks. So if you're engaged in melee and you're stuck in sort of the scrum with the Canoptic Wraith unit, you're going to be getting those rerolls on both their melee attacks and their pistol attacks as well, which is kind of sick. And you can also give them +1 strength and bonus to charge, which I guess if you need it is also good. But that's super sick. An Awakened Dynasty Silent King list. In today's day and age, chat, absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Would Hunting Ground stop Necrons or Green Knights or Tau from using their strat for dropping 3 inches away? Not typically. I believe that if we take a look at Hunting Ground plus like a 3-inch deep strike strat. So I guess we look at Cosmic Precision. Hunting Ground triggers when you set up a reserve unit. And Hyper Crypt, Cosmic Precision, is used anytime in the movement phase. And oh Jesus, I just minimized everything. No, come back. The Cosmic Precision affects you anytime during your movement phase, and targets somebody who's arriving. So you have to use Cosmic Precision first, because you use it before you go to arrive via Deep Strike, essentially. And then once they have arrived, Hunting Grounds comes into play. I think even if they had simultaneous triggers, because the reserves come in on the they come in on the Necron or Grey Knight or whoever's player's turn. They're the active player, so they'll choose sequencing anyway. So they'll just say, I'll use Cosmic Precision before your Hunting Grounds comes into play. So it won't affect abilities or stratagems that change where you can set up, but it will affect abilities and stuff that you use once you set up. Anything that happens after you set up a unit will come into play. Is it time to limit Grey Knights to 1 Nemesis Grandmaster again? Maybe with a small buff? I don't know, maybe. I think we'll have to decide whether it's what's really sort of the root cause there. Is it the Grandmasters themselves, or is it because I think that there's a potential that the actual powerful datasheet in that kind of brick is the regular Nemesis Dread Knight, right? Because that one's much faster than the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster gets a buff in melee, sure, but he's got to get to melee, and he doesn't have advance and charge. Whereas the regular Nemesis Dread Knight gets advance and shoot and advance and charge and fall back and charge. So I think the regular Nemesis Dread Knight is usually the one you see in multiples, and I think that one might be the problem. I think if anything, it's probably just a points cost issue. I think that they got a huge buff. They were already a faction. I guess it's like I don't know if like the Grey Knights positioning is kind of controversial because they had they were situationally extremely strong, and they just got this buff kind of to one of their least played units, but that was hugely powerful and just complements the faction immensely, and they didn't get any points cost increases. I don't know if Grey Knights players would have been too upset if you gave them a massive increase in the damage output of Dread Knights, but then also increase their points value by 10 or something, and I think that's probably what they needed. But we may see that, obviously we're probably staring down the barrel of another update in a month or two here, and we may see that come into play in that instance. I don't know. I don't know if Grey Knights are a big enough problem for the balance team to really be trying to consider them. Grandmaster shouldn't be allowed to take Sigil. That's interesting. Maybe. That's so classic, though. He's been taking Sigil for ages. Yeah, I think like that's maybe the case. I could see that a lot of the reactive effects maybe should be removed from Dread Knights using them. They can use mists, right? There's no restriction. Inky. Jesus Christ. Or is that infantry only? I guess it's worth looking. Hi, baby. I know. Yeah, it's any Psyker unit. So, yeah, they can mist them too. That might also be problematic, right? Because they can commit really hard in and then just be, like, invincible. Mist is just really strong. Mist is just the strength of the faction, I think. And I could see it that, the combination of being able to shoot well and then also be kind of immune to response, especially from a melee-focused army, is, like, really problematic. Which is probably why their guns were nerfed to begin with, right? Is that they could be so defensive against ranged attacks that they weren't really allowed to win the shooting matches themselves. Rather, Nemesis Dread Knights are better, but spamming 6 of the same data sheet is kind of the problem. Yeah, I don't disagree. I kind of wish that a lot of the stuff like that makes you a character is like a basic datasheet that also has a character version. It's like, especially the ones that are built from the same kit. I kind of wish were an upgrade or something, where it's like they cut into your field allowance of that unit, but that's not really how the design of the game is trending. So I think that's fine. Don't think Nemesis Dread Knights are undercosted. It's just 5 or 6 heavy side cannons is the problem. I mean, maybe, but if they're more expensive, then you can fit less heavy side cannons into your army. Or you can fit the same number, but you have to pay for them. Like, I think that feels like sort of the same, like two sides of the same argument, right? Where you're like, you have too many of the same unit. Well, we should make that unit more expensive, so you're less incentivized to take more of them. And you're like, well, you could do that, or you could just strictly, physically restrict their field allowance or whatever, which is, I guess, a little bit more nuclear, but kind of does the same thing. All right, let's move on from talking about Grey Knights, because we talked a lot about Grey Knights. Hi, Inky. Uh-huh. Yeah. You want to be on camera? Oh, here's my cat. She's all snuggly today. It's a little cold today, so I think she's like, getting some body hate up in her. Oh, and then taking my headphones off. All right, let's dive into a different faction. We have a little bit of Demons we can look at. Kelpie Crusade was another event that went down. If I can find it, there it is. In Scotland. It was also run by Grey Knights. How many Nemesis Dread Knights do you think we had? Oh, not many, actually. Just 3. And a Paladin squad. Big old Paladin squad. That's a bit of a different list. I said we weren't going to talk about Grey Knights, and then immediately we did. But we have the big Paladin squad with the Sigil, so they can jump in and do stuff and then run away. That's basically... It's kind of another Dread Knight, but it does cost 3 times as much as a Dread Knight. Because you get the side cannons on the 5 side cannons, plus the Grand Master, I think it's another one, right? Or is it the Brother Captain just that gets the heavy weapon upgrade? But you can put like a ton of side cannons into a Paladin squad on foot. The downside is that they're only AP1, so they actually don't really do anything. It's the issue. You can, if you're not shooting at like light infantry or like really light vehicles, they kind of just bounce. Even Space Marine bodies are like largely immune. We've had a little bit of spice from Bruce Duffy running Death Guard, running the Stinky 2.0. That's what I'm going to call my like branded deodorant. Triple Putrefiers, double Blight Spawn, plus Typhus in a bit of a Plague Marine brick. So we're running 2 10s and 2 5s of Plague Marines. We're slowly arcing back. The trajectory of Death Guard has changed. For a minute, they strayed from the path of taking only Plague Marines packed with infinite numbers of characters, and slowly the trend is reversing. People are like, wait. Plague Marines got nerfed, but they're so good still. And they didn't nerf the characters that much, so that's really what we're taking them for anyway. 3 Death Guard Rhinos to keep them in, so 2 for the 10s and 1 for the 2 5s. Some Cultists, 1 Cultist unit, a single unit of Chaos Bond for some utility, 2 Fetid Blood Drones, 2 Plague Burst Crawlers. Again, there's no more Tyrian or anything. They don't really have the buffs for the heavy armor that we have been seeing a little bit more often, so not too much of a focus on heavy armor, but we do have some interesting demons in a Nurgling unit and a Nurgle Soul Grinder. So paying the tax of taking those Nurglings, it's horrible, I know. You have to take a Nurgling unit. One of the most efficient units in 40k in order to take a Soul Grinder, but there we have it. We can pull up the Nurgle Soul Grinder profile. I believe that each of the Soul Grinder profiles gets a different weapon based on its mark. I think that the Nurgle one gets a vomit weapon. But they give you a kind of another... they give you another long-range gun, which is nice. That Death Guard don't typically have too much themselves. And they give you another really hefty body. And again, the reason that we're taking lots and lots of these allied units with Death Guard specifically is that Death Guard have aura debuffs. So they're all going to be affecting, or most of them are going to be affecting the Soul Grinder as well as whatever actual Death Guard units are nearby. So he's like a big T11 4+ invuln save body. So he's not easy to kill with 14 wounds. You can also give him -1 to be hit or -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill when Death Guard units are near you. Or you can reduce their armor saving throw. The downside of the Soul Grinder and most Demon Guns, to be fair, because they're kind of paying a tax, I think, for Draught of Terror, is that they don't tend to have high AP values. So being able to reduce your opponent's AP value, or armor save value, is really nice. You get these like big 3 damage guns that are only AP 1, so they're kind of meant to hit heavy infantry like Terminators, but they'll bounce off Terminators 90% of the time. Oh, he gets an indirect fire gun, excuse me. So you get another indirect fire. Oh, it's the Khorne one that gets the Scream. Which is, or the Torrent weapon, which is really not very good, actually. It's a good flamer, but compared to the other weapons you get, it's actually not the most exciting one. So you get basically another Plague Burst Crawler shot. 36-inch range, strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage with lethal hits, blast, indirect. So he's just another. He's 10 points more than a Plague Burst Crawler. He doesn't get the Entropy Cannons, or I guess this list has 1 of each, Entropy Cannons and Plague Spitters, which is probably the way to go. The Plague Spitters are actually like unironically super sick. But he does get absolutely insane melee. Look at his melee profiles. You pick a sword or a claw. The claw's more attacks but less damage. The sword is less attacks but more damage. And you also get that in addition to its Iron Claw, which is strength 16, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage. So he has a minimum 8 attacks in melee. All at like D6-ish damage at pretty high strength and AP values. And you're also probably reducing their toughness by putting in a Contagion model next to them as well. So these guys are not too bad. Pretty sick. I kind of like that. It's definitely more interesting than just taking more War Dog Brigands. And I guess, like, interestingly, you could take them alongside War Dog Brigands and use Death Guard as like the buffs for them. But the downside of the Soul Grinder perpetually is that it's hard to move them. They're on like a 160 mil base. It's like it's fucking so huge, and they have this little thing that they can move over 4-inch tall terrain features, but those are actually very rare, so that usually doesn't really matter. And you still have to have room for your base to stand on an 8-inch move, so most of the time you can't even do it. The Soul Grinder's actually just super tough to move around, but player place terrain, it's a little bit easier because you can create holes for him to go through. But a little bit of spice. I don't know. I kind of like that. It can also deep strike. That's true. Yeah, that's a fair point too. Yeah, you're also like, you're kind of pressuring the middle of the table with all of the rhinos with plague marines in them. Like, you can't really go near this army. It doesn't have a long threat range because most of it's just move 5 like ground pounding dudes. But if you run up to it, right, you run up like 15 inches away from this rhino, those plague marines are just going to charge you, and you're going to die. So if you screen too hard, either the rhinos can Top Gun firing deck out the good guns out of the plague marines and kill you with shooting, or they're just going to charge you and kill you with the little 5-mans. And so you can open a lot of space for the Soul Grinder to come in. So it's actually very reasonable. Although it does have an indirect fire weapon. I think most of the time you want it to stay on the table and just shoot guns. I wonder how much like the multi Soul Grinder lists just make use of Realm of Chaosing around to just deep strike uppy downy and deep strike 2 of them. It's probably worth playing. I gotta do a like a demon gun line at some point that has Burning Chariots and Lords of Change and Soul Grinders in it, and just tries to shoot you to death, because I think it's actually probably not that bad. They get a Strength 13. Like, when the Wombo combo is enacted, the Tzeentch version gets a Strength 13, D6 plus 2 damage, like Laser Cannon with Ignore Cover. Which is definitely something. D3 shots is a little bit awkward, but at least it blasts. Pretty interesting stuff. I don't know if we have much else to talk about from the Kelpie Crusade over here. Larry Martin, Phenomeno, over from the Discord server, actually did pretty well, 4-1. Congratulations to him. Triple Blade Champion Custodians. Hot damn. Okay. Just Triple Blade Champion and 3 Custodian Warden squads with 3 Guard squads to follow up. That's it. That's the list. Oh, and Trajan Flores. Excuse me. We have Trajan Flores for one of the big squads. Print it. Done. Easy peasy. That's very straightforward. I appreciate that simplicity in list building, you know? Knight Armigers need a point increase. I think if we start seeing Knight Armigers like explode the metagame, I could agree with you. But I think that giving like the big, I think it's been shown, right? It's kind of clear that like the big Knight focused Imperial Knights list are not very good. So at least they have the list based, like that's Armiger based to fall back on, where they super, like they get hyper efficiency out of their rerolls. And I think that's good for them. I think it's okay that they have like a little bit of an identity that's not just like run big Knights across the table and hope for the best. All right. I guess we can jump into Chaos Knights. We said that the Void GT. Oh, was that last weekend? That wasn't even this weekend, huh? Unless my search parameters are messed up. Inky's trying to destroy everything I know and love. Yeah, I think that was last weekend. Guess we can go back in time to get ourselves some knights to talk about. Jake Ward with Imperial Knights. Very straightforward list. A lot of punchy boys. The Mighty Morphing Pyre Rangers. Canis Rex, Cerestus Lancer, Knight Crusader with Mysterious Guardian. This is pretty similar to yeah, I think a lot of like the big Knight focus lists play this kind of combination. The Lancer plus Canis Rex is very popular, and then having a teleporting shooting knight, whether that's the Crusader or even a Castellan or a Valiant, also works. Plus triple Warglaive, double Henchman, and a Calidus. Seems good. Yeah, I don't know if I have too much to say about a list like that. It's definitely aggressive. It's gonna come at you. It's gonna come at you, bro. And you can't escape the Crusader. It's gonna teleport itself into a really annoying position and then just stand there for the entire game, get sustained. Blam, 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 blam. Shoot a billion shots at you. Warglaives are definitely misnamed for sure, because their glaives are not actually the reason you're taking them. It's for their gunshot. To be fair, like their points value is not, it's not hyper expensive for what you're getting, which is like it's basically like a fast Gladiator Lancer, but I don't think I would put them on the same level as a Gladiator Lancer. They're like the same defensive profile, except they have an invuln save, and they have basically the same gun once the rerolls are accounted for. Except that theirs has to be like right next to you. But you get a melee attack, but also it's not a good melee attack, so who really cares? They're they're like a gladiator with extra steps, and the extra steps are like standing 12 inches away from your opponent. Which isn't, I don't know, it's not nothing. It's an okay place to be, but it's not a great one. They do get the benefits from the big knights, but it's not hyper efficient. I do think that they could, I don't know whether or not you want Warglaives to be better at shooting, or you want to have an armature profile that's good at fighting. Like, it's weird that Chaos Knights have the Carnivore, which is just purpose-built for killing people with their punchy fists, and they're so good at doing it because they've been very specifically designed to do that, versus the Warglaive that's kind of trying to like half-ass doing two things. And I just wish that they had an armature profile that was just a double chainsword guy or something, that was like actually good at fighting, and then you could wombo combo them together. I think that would be nice. OC8's definitely different for sure. I don't believe that armatures can't take the indirect weapon, chat. That's only war dogs. It's one of the yet another benefit that war dogs have over armatures. The comparison, I think the intention was that bondsman abilities were meant to up stat the armatures to the point that they competed with war dogs at the same points value. But oh man, did they not do that? Especially since they then nerfed bondsman abilities, right? So like, war dogs are just better than armatures in like every way. The only thing that they get is like the armatures get like a superior faction and a detachment ability, and occasionally they get like +1 to hit on their guns or something. But whatever. Bring back big knights for chaos for sure. The one rampage is nice to see, but it definitely is a little bit sad. I don't disagree. Remove towering, give Overwatch back. I think you have to have towering though. Like the issue is like you get rid of towering and like you think that would be fine, right? And then you suddenly discover that it's almost physically impossible to get line of sight to anything. Because you have to be wholly inside terrain that you're touching. It's like, it's so hard. It's almost impossible with the huge bases to do it. It's even hard with like big vehicles and stuff. But they oftentimes have an easier time doing it because they hull measure and they don't base measure. But the fact that you're like base measuring and you don't have the same level of like movement flexibility because you have this big like cake stand that you're trying to maneuver around the table means that it's almost impossible, I think, for knights to get line of sight to anything without towering. At least in a safe position. Like, they could run up in the middle of the table and do it, but then they die. Like, as people in chat are saying, they just get charged and explode because they don't have any melee defenses. I don't think Overwatch is like the... Like, having Overwatch would be a quality of life change, I think, for knights. But I don't think having... Like, being able to Overwatch is, like, the reason that the faction's not doing very well. That ain't it, fam, in my opinion. Give Bondsman back? Yeah, that I agree with. The Bondsman change, I mean, we've talked about it, like, I feel like every time we talk about Imperial Knights, the Bondsman change was just so poorly considered. Because they ripped the faction mechanic out of the faction. Imagine if they had, like, designed, like, orders for Astra Militarum. Because it's basically the same mechanic, right? Except that like you could only order, I don't know. It's like they made it so that all orders only affected infantry, but you have like tank commanders that are built to affect tanks with their orders. Like that's the purpose of the unit, and they were just like, nah, you can't do it anymore. And you're like, so why are these here? You know, or like, yeah, I don't know. You can like it was just such a nonsensical nerf, like just a knee jerk, bizarre nerf, and I don't understand it. It definitely gave Armigers a reason to be, which was that they supported the big knights and not really necessarily the other way around, which I think is okay. That in that context, it makes more sense that the Armigers are less powerful than War Dogs because they're not supposed to go toe to toe. They're supposed to give you an outlet for bondsman abilities. So they're like really powerful abilities that can affect most of your army, but you have to have these little dudes who are not quite efficient, but in order to affect yourself with them. But they got rid of that, so like, why do these guys exist? You know. I mean, if you don't have anything to Overwatch chat with, you could just not Overwatch. Like it's you're just not using the stratagem. Like it's annoying that like your opponent doesn't have to work around it or whatever, but like, you know, it's like factions not having access to tank shock, right? Or like grenades, where you're like, it's so annoying I don't have that because it's a powerful ability, but also it means I have more CP. So it's not like necessarily, you know, it's not 100% of a loss, I think. I'm definitely not explaining myself well, I think, in what I mean. Like having access to an ability, I don't think is like wildly transformative to a faction. It's like a quality of life update, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Armigers can't Overwatch, but they're really bad at it, you know? Like you want like big auto hitting weapons to Overwatch, and it feels like the stuff that was annoying that you'd like to Overwatch with was like the big Valiants and stuff that were like just tons and tons of auto hitting attacks, or the ones that rolled 1,000 attacks out, which is not necessarily Knights, but it was like Baneblades and stuff like that, where you just rolled and kept rolling and rolled again, and you know, we were fishing for a bunch of sixes or whatever. Like I understand why they got rid of it. I guess I'm also, like, personally, I don't really like the Overwatch mechanic just in general, and so I think that the less units all told that have access to it is probably the better. Like, instead of feeling bad that Knights don't have it, can we just get rid of it from everyone else too? and then no one has to feel bad about it. Don't get why it's 24 inches. I also don't understand why it's 24 inches. The Flamer wouldn't be as good if they could Overwatch, but they printed it being able to Overwatch. The fact that Titanic units can't Overwatch was not in the original release of the game. That came in a couple months after. Originally, you could get Overwatch with Valiants, and you had to constantly be worried about whether they would shoot you. Which it just like was what it was, you know? That was just a mechanic that everyone had to deal with. And I think that it wasn't insurmountable, because you could limit its lines of sight, or you can limit what it could, you know, what it could hit, but it definitely was annoying. Just take Calidus Assassins, or the Assassins can Overwatch, right? Calidus got a Flamer, Eversword does it for free, and so just do that. Overwatch can go and the game would be fine. Yeah, in fact, Land Raider Redeemers would be less abusive. You want to talk about all the people telling me the Space Marines are bad? Go look at the Land Raider Redeemer profile. And the fact that it's in like every single Space Marine list ever. That guy is so silly. He's a silly dude. All right, let me get back to where I was. And then we can keep talking about lists. We'll see if I have any more in my notes to talk about, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Oh, I messed up. All right, we do have a little bit more sort of Knights adjacent stuff to talk about. West Coast GT was the biggest event of the weekend, 160 players. I think like the top, John McAfee, taking his Necrons out. The top couple of lists were kind of whatever. I don't know if there's like too much to be gleaned from them. Again, it was a little bit less of a, I don't know, unique weekend in terms of list composition. We did have some Thousand Sons to talk about, maybe because I have a wild Thousand Sons bias because I think they're neat. But we're running Ahriman, 2 disc sorcerers. One's got the crystal, one's got Lord of Forbidden Lore, so we can do all sorts of chicanery and slow people down. Bunch of Rook Marines, 3 units of 10 actually, which is kind of nuts. Amuleth Vortex Beast, Vanguard Enlightened, and then 2 War Dog Stalkers, which is pretty wild. We haven't really seen Thousand Sons take advantage of like they themselves also have a synergy with cross-faction allied units because they can. A lot of their stuff is internal, and allied units are a little parasitic because they don't generate Kabbalistic ritual points for the army because they aren't Thousand Sun sorcerers. But what they do is they can use Twist of Fate, which affects all attacks. It doesn't necessarily care that it is a Thousand Sun attacking you for your armor save to be removed. You still can't take saves, which means that taking units with high volume attacks or armor piercing attacks is pretty nice in that instance. So we're using double stalkers, double War Dog Stalkers, which is the character version, which is a little bit scary because you're also running Thousand Sun Sorcerers. So we have 6 characters in this list, which I don't know if I'm super in love with, but that's okay. I think we're mostly taking these guys for +1 to wound, and then you can strip saves on whoever you're shooting at, right? They are taking Demon Breath Spears in place of cannons, chain cannons, which I think you would kind of expect, but getting like auto penetrating a Melta 4 into people is pretty nice. It's also just like good shooting that you don't necessarily have access to in Thousand Sons proper, which can definitely help as well. There is one Mulith Vortex Beast shot. There is 1 and 1 unit of Zangor Enlightened, to be clear. Just so you know, a big vehicle Overwatch. Well, so like, there's I don't really like. I think that the difference between like a big vehicle overwatching and a big unit of guys overwatching is kind of like non-existent, right? Because you can have a Land Raider Redeemer Overwatch, or you can have 6 Aggressors of Twin League Flamers Overwatch, and I think the end result is kind of the same. I think the problem is Overwatch. I don't think it's necessarily the weapons that you're specifically overwatching with. I don't think it's fair to say that like the edition is entirely shooting based though, because as we've been seeing, like most of the lists that are doing well, like even if we look at this list at the top, right? Adeptus Custodes is like almost entire. They shoot a little bit, and this variety was running Calladii, but that just gives them kind of covering fire while the Custodian Guard get to work. That's almost entirely shooting or melee. Space Wolves is almost entirely melee. Death Guard is like largely melee. Grey Knights is typically shooting oriented if they're taking the Nemesis Dread Knights, which they are, to be fair. But also the Brotherhood Terminators are a bit hybrid. And Adeptus Sororitas is like a little bit of a hybrid. So like I think like the lists that are, it is at worst, I would say, sort of a hybrid melee and ranged, sort of metagame. But we have been seeing a predominance of almost entirely melee-centric armies doing extremely well. A lot of these Necron lists that are running multiple units of Wraiths, like that's an entirely melee, oriented kind of archetype. And Again, we're seeing armies like Adeptus Custodes and Chaos Demons doing well. We can hop into that Chaos Demon list as well if we want to. And we're also seeing armies like Black Templars, specifically the ones outside Ironstorm Spearhead. Any Black Templars that isn't an Ironstorm Spearhead Black Templar. And even, to be fair, I guess some varieties of Ironstorm Spearhead Black Templars are most largely melee oriented. Blood Angels entirely melee oriented. So like, I think that it's a hybrid edition at worst, and it might even at this stage be oriented in favor of melee armies. Melee armies, at the very least, score secondaries much better than ranged focused armies. To be fair, because it's much easier to take opponents' objectives when melee. So if you get secure or you get tempting in an awkward position, not only are you in a more aggressive position typically, but you're also in a better position to steal those objectives away. And that's my 2 cents about it. This is just really a little bit interesting. It's kind of all over the place. This is from Warzone Wycombe, Byron Sudu. Running Bellicor, Shalaxi, Scarbrand, and Changeling. Changeling's back after a long hiatus away. Plus a Nurgling unit, 1 Plaguebearer unit, some Blood Crushers. No attachments for the Blood Crushers, interestingly. So just the Blood Crushers just hanging out, chilling by themselves. Although Scarbrand does buff them with his aura, his +1 attack aura. Because he buffs non-monsters, which does affect the mounted units and the infantry units. Which means he can buff nearby Blood Crushers and Rendmasters, which is pretty sweet. Although he only buffs their Hellblade attacks. He doesn't buff their Horn attacks, because you can't buff the attack value of extra attack weapons. A bunch of Fiends to be fast and scouty. Bunch of Flamers and Screamers to do actions. So mostly just a real secondary focused style of list. All right, chat. That's all the armies that I had marked out. Does anybody have any factions that they want us to dive into? Those are the ones that I took a look at. But we can find some results for people who want to look at some specific examples of high-performing lists. Funk611, thank you for the shout-out on hitting that like button. Hell yeah. April Fools was yesterday. Yeah, but I wasn't live yesterday. That's the difference. So we got a little bit of a little baby April Fool's today, where we talked about how overcosted Armiger Warglaives are. We want to look at some orcs. There was just an orc list that I was looking at. Yeah, so over at Warzone Wycombe, this is 3-1-1 with orcs. With a Squigosaur boss, with Super Cyborg, Gazgul Thraka, the Great Man himself, plus a Smash a Squig Knob, and a Mega Armor Knob. 2 units of Beast Snaga Boys, 2 units of Boys, some trucks for them. 5 Flash Kits. No Captain Badruck, but 5 Flash Kits just to hang out and be there. 5 Burna Boys, 2 units of 10 Gretchen, 5 Commandos, it's not 5 Commandos. It's always 10 Commandos now. I have to remind myself. There's no 5 Commandos anymore. 2 units of Commandos, a Mega Knob Squad, second Mega Knob Squad, 1 Bubble Chucka Mech Gun. Wild. A Squigog Boys unit for the knob to go into, and a Storewise unit. Really MSU. Holy crap. We are all over the place with these guys. Jesus. Yeah. We're just scoring up a storm today. So it's like 40 boys, a couple trucks for the boys, and then everything else is like mostly just a scoring unit. Mega Knobs can obviously like punch pretty good, but they're also just like little 3-man units. Squigog Boys can punch pretty good, but then we have double Commandos to just move block people and like pin them in their deployment zones. So like Grots and stuff can go do actions everywhere. That's pretty interesting. It's also like a sort of list that you would see like the singletons weird boys in that just teleport themselves around the table too. Just more dudes you can score. Good. It's kind of the name of the game. Which I think is a direction that orcs have to go in. because there is a like orcs. I think are really good at. They're really good at melee, at like fighting in melee, but I don't know if they're good at winning the fight in melee. If that makes sense. When they hit like another melee focused army, a lot of times orcs like fall apart because they're only good for one turn, and other armies can be good every turn. So I think having orcs focus more on like smaller units that can go toe to toe with bigger units on the WA turn, and then also give them a scoring advantage is probably the future. Or just taking Gargantuan Squiggoths, that helps. Those guys don't need the WA. They'll kill you any day of the week. I got a 3 damage sweep attack or whatever. Let's go. Hate playing against orcs. Can't figure them out like 05 against them. Have you tried going first? That's the real question. That's the real question. How good are fiends in a demon army? They're all right. They're like high attack volume, which is pretty good. They're sort of like good anti-medium infantry. The good thing about demons is that they have good, like, they don't have good ranged attacks, but they have a good way of delivering basically all of their melee, because they can just throw it down in annoying places. And they also give you like a -1 to be hit aura, or -1 to hit aura, which is also kind of cool. So, yeah, you don't see them super often, but they are pretty good. Any non-horde AdMech wins? No. Well, yeah, there was an AdMech win from Titan Slayer. I talked about it in the Monday video. You can go check out my video from yesterday. They ran just Red Zone core. It was Iron Strider focused, so it was 9 Ballistari, 9 Sidonians. So I guess it depends on what you call a horde. That's not a horde. That's a herd because they're mounted. But yeah, I'll talk about that list over there. They're way better than Space Marines in melee. Vanilla Space Marines, maybe. I don't think they're better than Blood Angels, though. Blood Angels and Black Templars, I think, will like give orcs a real bad time. If you don't get a good WA turn off in those matchups with orcs, then they like toast you with flamers, and then the Sword Brethren get to work, and then all the orcs disappear very quickly. But also, yeah, going first is big. Going first and having move blockers. We saw one of the coolest games, and I think I'm going to do a Space Marine focus video pretty soon here. One of the coolest games that I think we streamed recently was when we streamed Pro Tabletop against, I forget who they were playing against. We streamed Ultramarines versus Orks at 8TC. And the Ultramarines literally just deployed 9 Inceptors directly in front of the Orc army. Like the Orcs WAD, or they held the WA, I think, for an extra turn basically. And so the Ultramarines had to play Super KG for the Orcs to do anything. And they put scouts and stuff in front of them turn 1, which you have to do. If you have 4 deploys, and it's one of the reasons you see these Orc lists with 20 commandos in them, is so that they can control what's in the middle of the table. And they can kill your 4 deployers if you have them. Because if you move block orcs, they get destroyed. Because they never get a good WA turn. But the longer the orcs hold the WA, you have to keep them at bay, right? So they can't push it forward. Like they get a lower value when they do call the WA. So he did that with scouts early, but he had 9 Inceptors in his list. And round 2, WA still hadn't been called. So he just dropped all the Inceptors in front of the Orc player. And, you movement block the vehicles with your engagement range and drop it around ruins and stuff. You prevent, like, good disembarks when you destroy their transports. And then Inceptors also just shoot good, right? So they killed a bunch of stuff when they came in. And the Orc player had another turn where he could kill the Inceptors, but he couldn't kill anything else. And the entire Space Marine army just got to sit there wailing on him for, like, 3 consecutive rounds. And eventually there was nothing left of the Orc army. And at that point, like, Marnius Calgar, like, gets to work, starts punching. That was one of the coolest uses of Inceptors I've ever seen, to be honest. Ultramarines players just like, okay, if you don't want to come out, I'll give you something to chew on, but it's just 3 Inceptor. It's just, 3 Inceptor units. Have fun with that. And they also blew up a truck and killed some guys. Pretty good stuff. Good luck boob blocking on Search and Destroy. I mean, that's true. Yeah, if you have the... Like, there are maps where the rush distance is really close, and that's usually Orc favored for sure, but there are also maps where you're playing Hammer and Anvil, and the opposite is true, so, you win some, you lose some. If we want to take a quick peek for Adeptus Mechanicus here, chat, we can do that. See if we can find anybody at Wet Coast. 3-3 at Wet Coast GT. It's not quite as exciting as we would hope. 3. Wow. This is WTC scoring. So, Ricard Stormhammer. I hope that's your real name, Ricard, because oh my god, we need to get this. Somebody get this man an Astra Militarum army with a bunch of super heavies stacked. Ricard over here going 3, 1, 2, 2 draws, but they're WTC draws, so they are actually within 5 points of the opponent. This was Hunter Cohort though, so I don't know. Take with what you will. No enhancements whatsoever. We don't have a single Skitarii Marshal in this list. 2 Manipuli, no upgrades. 3 Techno-Archaeologists. 2 Area Deny. 1 Ranger unit, 2 Vanguard units. 12 Cataphront Breachers. Oh, and then the great host of Taraxi descend. 2 units of 3 units of 5 Sky Stalkers. 3 units of 10 Sterilizers. Taraxi are so good in this attachment. 2 units of Raiders, 2 units of Sulphur Hounds. Yeah, that sounds about right. 12 Sulphur Hounds and 3 Raiders, plus infinite Taraxi. Sounds about right. Yeah, cool. I guess that counts as a horde, right? It's not like the million billion Skitarii, but infinite Taraxi is definitely a mood. Plus Cataphront Breachers is cool to see. Taking up the rear. Hanging out in there, doing their thing. CleverInvective was 5-1. What event were you at? I would love to take a look at your list. So by the way, folks, I will be live after the stream. I have a pod game. We're playing a Battle Company. We're doing the Salamanders Battle Company again. I think we're playing the Old Mirror against some other Space Marines, and we'll see if we can get the W with the Salamanders list. I got 2 games today and tomorrow. I'm going to be playing Battle Company games. Today's Salamanders, tomorrow's Ultramarines. We're trying to get 1 W. I could have won my last game with the Salamanders, but I messed up my secondaries. It's the downside of drinking and playing 40k, but that's not gonna I'm not gonna let that stop me. I'm gonna keep playing. I'm gonna keep playing wildly inebriated. CleverInvective, 18th at Wet Coast with Ultramarines. Man after my own heart. And a Vanguard Spearhead. Vanguard Spearhead with no Uriel Ventress. That's a take. Combi Weapon Lieutenant. Phobos Lieutenant with Ghost Weave. Do you take him with any unit, or does he just chill and shoot people and run away? Lieutenant with Blade Driven Deep, plus another Lieutenant. We're Lieutenanting it up today. 3 Marnius Calgars. Whoa! That's so many Marnius Calgars. Hot damn. Big Blade Guard Veteran Squad. So we could drop the Blade Guard Veteran Squad with the Lieutenant and Marnius Calgar if we wanted to, and put them all in the forward deploy if we want it. A big Hellblaster Squad. I guess they could also forward deploy if we wanted to do that as well. 2 Eliminator Squads, an Incursor Squad, Infiltrator Squad, Lancer, Redemptor, Repulsor Executioner, Thunderstrike. No, that seems good. Do you put the Phobos Lieutenant in the Incursor squad so they can shoot and scoot, and you keep getting the +1 to hit over and over and over again? Because that turns on all the vehicles, and it turns on the Hellblasters, because you can kind of supercharge the Hellblasters with +1 AP, right? If they're shooting from far enough away, you can fish for sustain or fish for lethals with the Lieutenant, and then they go to like AP4 with Strike from the Shadows. That seems kind of goated. Plus, they like teleport around the table if you need to get angles. I guess they strategic reserve around the table. They don't get deep strike. Which is a little sad. This is a cool list. This is what I'm talking about, chat. Everybody be like, oh, yeah, you gotta play Black Templars, play Space Marines. No, you don't. Just like cool stuff. The Space Marine Codex is so like stupidly deep. Play one of the many other like dozens of perfectly playable combos they have. Hellblasters in reserves. Yeah. Yeah, and then just being able to constantly like uppy downy them, right? And just pop them around to the edges of the table just seems really strong. It does feel like we're missing, like there's a Uriel Venture sized hole in the list because he's like it feels like he is one of the reasons that you are playing Ultramarines if you're playing the Ultramarine Vanguard. Because the synergy is just so strong, but I understand not taking him because he doesn't really do anything functionally on the table. He's just a guy. I usually ended up strategic reserving him or like sticking him in a spare slot in a transport somewhere. Like he's inside the Repulsor Executioner until you need him to like stab one dude to death and then get shot. So I understand that. He's basically like you get a secondary out of him and then he's an upgrade to the to whatever squad you're deep striking. But it is useful to have. I played against a Dark Angels variety of this list right after. It was like shortly after I think John Lennon had done his like Worlds run with the Ultramarines Vanguard, and I played against the Dark Angels version, and the Assault Centurions kept coming off the table edge and shooting me, and I was like, man, he could get there's no way to stop the Assault Centurions from shooting me, or the Devastator Centurions from shooting me from like an insane angle if you just put them over here. And then like on like round 5 I was like, oh, hold up, they don't actually deep strike, so he has to be coming off the table edge, which is why I'm actually not dying right now. Yes, I understand. It's probably different with Hellblasters because they're not quite the same like level of range and firepower. But it's definitely a classier pick because you get, I don't know, Hellblasters are just rad. They're just a cool unit. The Speeder in Thunderstrike. Phobos Lieutenant can deep strike and as the Cloak for Lone Operative. Oh, so you don't put him in with the Incursors? That's interesting. He definitely seems cool though, because he's just one little infiltrator, right? He's like, or eliminator. He's like it's like having a singleton eliminator somewhere with Lone Operative if you want him. So he could just like drop in and run around. Which is cool. I wish he did a little bit more damage, and he was. I'm a sucker for like the Death Jester style profiles where it's just like this little dude who runs around by himself and shoots people and is like hit by himself isn't necessarily a ton of damage, but like once he combos out and once he's like, you know, in as part of a larger whole, he's actually kind of dangerous. That's a unit archetype that I'm an absolute sucker for. And the Phobos Lieutenant scratches that itch, but his gun kind of bounces off you, which is a little bit unfortunate. But obviously, as a utility unit, he's definitely strong. It is the Lieutenantception for sure. Absolutely. That's super cool, though. Yeah, I like that. I don't know. CleverInvective. I like this list. And congratulations on 5-1. That's impressive. That's a good run with like a super technical list. I love lists like this where it's like clearly. I think I made a meme about it like years ago, but it's like you look at your opponent's list and you're like, what is this? Blade Guard veterans, Eliminators, like Hellblasters. These aren't units that have been good in 8 months. These have been good since the start of the edition. Since Osamoan gave you wound rerolls. So either this is like a dude who just bought this army off eBay, or all of these are very carefully considered and I'm about to be reamed. And it's usually the second thing. It's very rarely the first thing. You always hope it's the first thing, but usually there's more thought can put into it. Yeah, the Oath of Moment lethal hits is definitely like the way to go. It's super. I always forgot about it every time I ran my guys. But it was because I was always like onto the chaptering. You really need it if you have the if you don't have the +1 to wound, just like on a stick. But obviously, getting +1 AP on the big squads when you need it with the guns with Strike from the Shadows is like really strong. That's a stratagem that I think gets overlooked inside this detachment a lot. Everyone's thinking about the uppy downies, but you don't often remember that they can just push their AP to super duper high numbers. Hi, Inky. The kitty's back. Look at this kitty cat. Hello. Aww. Yeah? What? Okay. All right, chat. Anything else that we want to look at? I think he's lucky with matchups. I don't know necessarily. I can look at the opponent's list. Went down round 1 to Canoptech Court. I'm looking at this correctly, right? Canoptech Court do be good. I don't know if the Blade Guard veterans really like fight their way out of the Canoptech Wraiths. Canoptech Wraiths also don't have a bad profile at hitting back at Blade Guard veterans. You really want kind of like high toughness values against them because their strength is really mediocre. But they're like AP1, strength 6 AP1, which is like really kind of a really good profile on the Blade Guard, which is a little bit awkward. So I think GW will start to limit how many captains, lieutenants, and chaplains you're able to take. I don't think so. I think that the lists, the most powerful lists don't tend to take too many of them. You know, you're taking like Ironstorm Spearhead with 3 Tech Marines or whatever. And the lists that take a bunch of them are cool. People love Hero Hammer. There's this like big push in this edition, not from the design of the game, but from the community, which has shocked me, like against like a Hero Hammer style, which has been absolutely mind-boggling to me. I was like, but people like it when you take a bunch of cool characters that have cool abilities. Round 2 against some regular ass Astra Militarum. I know, regular Astra Militarum with Kazarkin and Basilisk, Sinky. That's crazy. Calgar fit a 5-inch charge into Necrons? Oh no. That's unfortunate. That's a sad time. The interesting thing about these styles is that like Space Marine, my gut feeling, and not having played this matchup, is that Space Marine forward operators like clear out Kazarkin super fast. Because, you know, you're fighting against like T3 mid-save dudes. The Kazarkin are really dangerous, but if you get the alpha on them, they explode. Like a scout squad will just charge into a Kazarkin squad and kill them. You have to have the distance to do that, obviously, so it's not perfect. But if you can take the mid board, then you can start to get like the Hellblasters and stuff onto the tanks, and then it's all over, I think, at that point. But obviously, CleverInvective can correct me if I'm wrong about how that matchup goes. -1 ballistics go and cover degrades Imperial Guard shooting. I guess that makes sense. Are you not normally in cover anyway because they're indirect most of the time? The -1 ballistics go kind of hurts though. Or do you mean against like the direct fire guns? That's the interesting thing about the tanks in this list is that the tanks also get if I remember correctly, they get the second benefit from the detachment. They don't get both of them. because one of them requires infantry, but the other one the tanks just like benefit from. So you actually just get like a passive defense buff on your vehicles, which I think a lot of people forget about, because most varieties of this list just take only infantry. Even though you can take your like big T12 idiots and like actually make them harder to kill. Oh no, they get both. Oh, I'm totally wrong. Yeah, they just get -1 to hit and cover. I guess they just mostly have cover anyway because it's 10th edition. But that makes the big tanks like win gunfights a lot more often than you'd expect them to. I did say Orks would be S tier. I think I did couch it by saying that if Custodes were like saw a lot of play, I think Orks would struggle, and I think that ended up happening. And then I think Custodes got so popular that everyone teched against melee, and then like Orks got teched by the melee and by the counter to the melee, right? Like Orks got out-teched by Custodes and out-teched by everyone teching for Custodes. So they got it coming and going, which I think was like extra bad. If all you had to do was dodge Custodes or outplay them, if you were playing Orks, I think Orks would be okay. But everyone's like, I'm gonna take multi-damage blast weapons and like a bunch of movement blocking and binding tendrils and suppression effects, and Orks are like, no, don't do that. I think Orks are unironically super strong. I think that the meta is toxic to them right now, though. Which, mea culpa. I didn't appropriately account for the impact of everyone hot swapping to Custodes. To be clear, too, I don't even think Custodes are that good. I think Custodes have like a really big. I think that there's a huge perception that Custodes are really strong. But I think that Custodes have so many answers available that, like, that's why they're not running over everyone right now. It's because, like, everyone's just taking anti-Custodes guns and they're exploding. Which is why I think it's cool that people are rotating into taking Caladius grab tanks and stuff, like like just regular ass infantry. Because I think that the regular ass Custodes infantry armies are like eminently counterable by most of the game. Maybe not Orks, to be clear. But there's a lot of armies that just give them what for and blow them up. Anything that has access to a 4+ feel no pain? I mean, I guess. I guess like the problematic part with the Wardens, I think, is that they have the 4+ feel no pain and high OC value. Is like the scariest part, and sometimes reactive moves if the Ceaseless Hunter guy's in them. Because a lot of times what you would do is if they activate their defensive effect, you just ring them with idiots and just stop them from going anywhere, and then like give them a turn to chill. You move block them super hard and then call it a day. And then like go in on them next turn. You definitely need the 4+ feel no pain thing is maybe it should be a 5+. But I like there's it kind of invites a lot of counterplay where like it forces the custodian player to like cycle out his warden units, like not just go hard with all of them all the time, because you'll burn off all their defensive effects all at once. And then there's also like a lot of situations where you can like just beat it with playstyle or whatever. Yeah, I guess like the awkward part is that a 4+ has like such a great chain, like such a great. Wow, I'm not even drunk yet and I can't even speak. It has such a great chance of just like awkwardly blanking all your damage. It's just like a negative play experience because there's like nothing you can do about it, right? You just have to sink into a really tough invuln save. Unless you can half their movement, or you give them -2 movement, or you throw idiots in front of them, or you do one of the many things that stops them from moving. And then they're like, oh, you have the objective for a turn, but I'll kill you next turn, and then I don't have to worry about it. Any good Raven Guard? I think Raven Guard are... I think Raven Guard are the Space Marines that I would actually consider probably not that good. I don't know if anyone is actually maining like honest to goodness Raven Guard. The problem with Raven Guard is like, and honestly, the issue with all of the Space Marine sub factions that are like have one character, like Raven Guard and White Scars are in the same boat. Is it that you don't just you get nothing for playing them, you know? Like, there's not really a reason to go into Raven Guard because you could just play any other faction and it would probably like feel better. You'd have more things to do, right? Any other sub faction. Like even without coming out with new detachments, like they could do detachments for them, but that would probably be a little bit silly. But even like I wish that like Corsaro and Shrike just had like monumentally more transformative abilities, like army-wide abilities or something. You know, make them like a Logan Grimnar kind of effect, where like you only get access to one extra character when you play those little tiny sub factions, but that character does like multiple things. And I think that's like much more interesting than right now, where you're just like, well, I could play Shrike and get like a cool lone operative guy, or I could just play Ultramarines and get every single character under the sun. Or I could play Black Templars and get a bunch of like free multi-meltas. You know, it just like feels bad. You played Orks twice? All right. Orks twice. 2 Orks. Double Orks. Fortunately, Vanguard has that anti-charge reactive move, which probably makes Orks feel real bad. Especially if you don't give them like stuff to chew on. You just like throw like idiot garbage in the main to move block them, and then they have to go for long bomb charges on the important stuff, which just runs away, and they just like sit out in the middle of nowhere and explode. That feels it's kind of sad for poor Orksies. 3 Orks. Oh my god. 3 Orks. Jesus Christ. This is why Orks aren't winning, chat. Specifically because of CleverInvective. He's beating all of them. Every Ork player has been killed. Does like Marnius Calgar like wear a necklace of Ork skulls now or something? Age and X. Play Space Force because you're stubborn. Yeah, I think it's also... It's a good... like, Space Force is not an example, in my opinion, of a Space Marine chapter that is, you know, underpowered, I guess. Like, Space Wolves have a lot of interesting options. And I think it's okay if, like, each chapter only has one place where they, like, truly shine. But they have a lot of flexibility that they can build into. And I think Space Wolves are a pretty good example of that, right? Because, like, Stormlands is their detachment, right? It's the detachment that Sons of Rust should have been, but wasn't because it sucks. But I think that you can play Space Wolves in a bunch of different ways. People are just like too lazy to do it, in my opinion. Or they would just, you know, if you're trying to eke every percentage point out of the Space Marine Codex, like you would go to Black Templars to play a different detachment or something. But if you wanted to play Space Wolves, I think you can play Space Wolves in most of the detachments, and I think it's totally fine. Space Wolves and Stormlands gives the White Scars feeling. Yeah. We got to play some Ravenwing on stream, I think. That's another... I was thinking about Space Marine lists that they don't get played quite enough. And I think it's like a knockdown drag-out fight between non-Stormland Space Wolves and like any variety of Dark Angels that isn't just Azrael and an Iron Storm. And I think I don't know, there's like a lot of play with that stupid Ravenwing detachment that I think could see some interesting play. I talked about Dark Eldar in my video yesterday, chat. Hi, Inky. I know, you're so cute. A Space Wolf outlier because you hate Stormlance Thunderwolf Cavalry? Yeah. I think that's the Thunderwolf Cavalry list is so bizarre because it's like so one note, right? I think it's like so much forward pressure that you just eventually die to it. But it could definitely get, you know, again, it's like Orks, right? Where it's like if you hit the melee counterplay where they just have infinite numbers of like movement blockers, you're like, I guess I die. I guess I'll explode. I think it's like, I don't know. It feels too counterable, in my opinion, to like be super strong, but I definitely understand why it sees so much play. It's like so mathematically insane that gets kind of wild. But at least you get to go zoom zoom. You get to be super fast. Zoom zoom zoom. All right. I think we'll hit one more faction, and then we'll probably hop off here. We could jump into Drukhari. Love it if Outriders had more support. Yeah, I'd agree for sure, 100%. I was gutted when they got rid of the like the attack bike combo with the bike chaplain, because that was, I was gonna play the shit out of that, where you could put attack bikes with like multiple grav weapons in to get anti-vehicle, and then you got devastating wounds from the chaplain, and even with just like twin bolters plus a bunch of random guns against non-vehicles, they averaged like a pretty staggering number of devastating damage. And against vehicles, they just like one-shot most vehicles in the game. And I was like, this combo rules. This is the coolest little unit ever. But they were like, nah. Get out of here, attack bikes. And I was like, great. So she's stuck with stupid Outriders and their enormous bases that have like one shot. Great. What a time to be alive. The Wolfen put the detachment over the top. I could see that. Just too fast. Too fast and too much damage. Yeah. They're probably too cheap. It's so weird because they like, I think the only thing that they have is being like a stat check, right? Because they don't do anything like, they don't score. They don't get points. They just prevent you from getting points by killing you. Mario's Cage going to your first tournament in a couple weeks. Hell yeah, man. Hope you have a good time. Ultramarines trying not to go with the flavor of the month with Vanguard. Well, I'm playing Ultramarines on stream tomorrow. I hope I am. I gotta make sure I put my list in correctly. I'm playing. I believe I'm playing Salamanders today and Ultramarines tomorrow. But I think Ultramarines Gladius, you could kind of play anything. Like honestly, Marnius Calgar's, or not Marnius, well, Marnius Calgar, first of all, is an absolute Chad. That man needs to be stopped. he's too strong. Marnius Calgar's insane, but I think Robooty Gilliman is underplayed. He's like maybe too expensive, but he's really annoying to kill. He's like super sticky, and he kills like anything in the game that he touches with his fist. If he punches you, you explode. Okay, now we're playing Salamanders today. I'm playing Ultramarines tomorrow. But we're playing like a bunch of random garbage. Bobby G should be 250. Could you imagine? Oh my god. Oh my god. I think Gilliman, I don't know. Gilliman's tough because he's like such an insane force multiplier that you can't, like, he's the complete package, right? I think that probably rather than making him less expensive, I would wish that they made his regeneration mechanic better. I don't like that it's a 3-up. A 2-up would feel like more, like you could count on it more, and like you could construct it as part of your game plan. I wish that any of those mechanics, Gilliman and Celestine and all those like Phoenix Gem, all that shit, I wish they just happened. The 2+ or 3+ roll or whatever is like so stupid. It feels very performative. And then like you can just get randomly like crapped on by failing it. I think Gilliman a lot of times is like, it's a 3+ to win the game a lot of times, because if your opponent not super often can kill him in one phase and then kill him again immediately. In the subsequent phase, they can do it if they like tank shock him and then melee him or something. But he has like his damage output and his supportive effects are so crazy. Like you can't make him cheaper, not significantly cheaper. Anywhere below like 320 something points, I think he gets like he's just like a you windmill slam in like all the time. He's like such an incredible anchor. A Reza goes to 2+ if he has Ultramarines near him. I could see that. Not over Lion taking Rebooty's 3+ invuln save. The invuln save plus the regeneration was like a little silly, to be fair. Marines without the consistent CP gen feel so helpless. I don't know about that. I think it's a benefit you get for playing Ultramarines, but I don't think like Space Marines necessarily have to play it. They passively have more free strat and access to free CP than anything else in the game, right? Because like they could play it in Azrael and or they could play it in Dark Angels and have Azrael do it too, or they have like infinite, access to like just rights of battle everywhere, right? Which to be fair, you can only do one of, but you have lots more. Like you have an easier way to put in your list than most other factions have. It's the 4+ invuln for him that annoys you. I mean, I guess that. Like that's just a normal character's invuln, to be fair. All right, chat. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and call the show there. Again, it was a bit of a quiet week, so we had a little bit of a low key show this week. But I'm sure next week we'll have a lot more. I got a lot of streams coming up, by the way. So mark your calendars. Well, first of all, in about 30 minutes, I'm gonna go live on Twitch and I'm gonna play an entire Salamanders Battle Company. So get on that. We're gonna get drunk and we're gonna play 70 Tactical Marines. And it's going to go great. Nothing's going to possibly go wrong. And everything will be fine. It'll all be fine. Everything's totally okay. In addition, I will be live a couple times over the week, either with commentary or with games. That's all on my calendar, which is linked in the description. But also, I'm going to be live at the Midgard GT Saturday and Sunday. So we're going to be live streaming 5 rounds of 40K from there. It's a local GT that runs a couple times a year, and it has some of the highest skill cap players in the community out of like the entire region. So it's probably going to get real spicy. So hope you come hang out. It should be fun. I'm just going to be live over there all weekend, live streaming. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a sick weekend. So I hope you come hang out with me for that. I'll create a YouTube. That'll be on this channel, not on the Twitch channel. That'll be here. I'll create a YouTube page for it probably tomorrow, and then I will be live over on the Twitch channel tomorrow playing a different kind of Battle Company. We're running through Battle Company lists today, chat. This week. So that's the theme of the week. A lot of Space Marine stuff going on. So I hope you come chill with me for those, either over on the Purple channel, over on Twitch, right after this, or over this weekend. So I'll see you there. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me, and remember to keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming, all that stuff, and I'll see you in like 20 minutes or whatever. What's the time zone for the calendar? It's on US Eastern, although it's a Google calendar, so I don't know if it converts it for you. I have no idea. But on mine, it's GMT -4 because that's my time zone. So yeah, cheers everyone. And also, if you're in my Discord, speaking of the calendar, just real quick, my calendar gets reposted to the stream schedule channel, and that all gets timestamped in whatever your local time zone is. I don't know if Google Calendars does it automatically, but I know that one does. So if you want to double check over there, all of the events go up on the Discord server. Cool. Cheers, everyone. Have a good one.